Wednesday. Deshi Miller here from Warrior Concepts here in East Central Pennsylvania. Most of you know that because you're regular followers. If you're brand new, just to give you a little pre-frame for this, Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday is about strategies and tactics, the things that kind of underpin the techniques. We discuss the things that make it easier for the techniques to be executed, or how to go about training in a way that maximizes your effort, right? So this is not a technique demonstration training. So if that's what you're looking for, you hit that back button, whatever, go binge watch the other demonstrations, okay? All right, it's not that we don't do those things. That's our Masterclass and the other programs. Okay, so what we're going to be doing during this episode is taking a look at going beyond repetition, going beyond what a lot of students do, right? We'll talk about that here in a minute. But what I really want to focus on is how to structure practice as a Deshi, as a true martial arts student who is, I don't know, in the words of the tradition, they're a worthy vessel for the teacher, for the shisho, for the master to transmit the lessons to, right? They're not just going to be good enough. They're not just going to, do it like a hobby or an interest or something like that. They're actually going to do it so that they can help preserve the lineage and pass it on to the next generation. Okay, so if you were on for Monday's Kuden podcast that we just did this week, this is the big focus, right? This idea of are we really being a student, or what type of student are we? Okay, so I'm going to take a look at four words in Japanese that mirror different places where people are. And here in English, we might still say that we're a student of, but it really points to something different. Only one of these on here not only is what we're talking about, but that one does all these other things. And I think this is where a lot of confusion can come in. Okay. But anyway, so we'll talk about this as we go, but I'm going to assume that you're not what I call a technique collector, right? You're someone who's serious about proficiency, mastery, those kind of things, right? You want to learn this to the deepest level possible, and you want to be good, right? You want to have the benefits and confidence, power, control, those kind of things that this art promises. Okay, so but here's the problem that most students like us run into. Okay, between classes, right? Our practice sessions. Right? What I mean is, when we're away from our teacher, okay, they can feel a bit disorganized. They can feel like we're missing something. They can feel like not just that something's missing, but we're not sure what to do. What will maximize things? And so what ends up happening is, if we don't know what to focus on, right? Like how long to train on something, when we actually have it, those kind of things. What can happen is we get kind of stuck in a loop, and the loop can look one of two ways. It can either look like we keep working on the same things the same way all the time, and there's no technique evolution, right? The techniques themselves don't evolve from the base model, the example, right? Hatsumi Sensei has said over and over again that the technique is not the lesson in and of itself, right? It merely points to where we need to begin, right? So techniques that somebody gets at white belt or early in their training shouldn't look the same. Not only should they be more refined and all that kind of stuff, but they shouldn't look the same if that person is a Nidan or an 8th Dan or a Daishihan. Okay? The only reason they would look the same is if that person is teaching other lower level people how to do that base model, right? So, so today we're going to fix that, I hope, right? Well, at least I'll give you some suggestions, right? So we're going to walk through exactly how to structure your personal training time the way a Deshi would, right? Somebody that's focused on mastering a technique and not just learning that base level step by step kind of thing, right? So the Deshi, again, we could use the word student, right? Martial arts student, but there's a different word for student, right? Um, this is the person who's training to go beyond repetition, and they're really trying to build true skill, depth of understanding, right? And confidence, not just in their abilities, but the lineage, right? Part of the difference between a student, as a lot of people tend to approach it, the way we think about it in the West, and a Deshi, just one aspect that I covered during Kuden is loyalty to the lineage. Right? A lot of people can think that that's like blind obedience or whatever, but it's not the same. Okay, so again, if this resonates with you, and you get value out of these things, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, those kind of things. It helps us get this stuff out, right? It helps you because the platform, whatever platform you're using, will make sure that you get notified of these things, and it helps other people that are actually looking for this kind of stuff to get it, right? Okay, so. So let's just jump right into this because I've got plenty and I've got a busy day, right? So let's start with the idea, and I don't have that part on the board. So if you're taking notes, okay, there are two kinds of martial artists. These are not my words; these are the words of master teachers that I've trained with, and whether they use the same words or different words, they're all pointing to the same thing. Okay, one is the collector. Okay, this person is always chasing the next move, the next skill, the next variation, right? But they haven't really dived into that technique, right? I have a quote up here, and you're going to hear me say it again. I don't know if you can see it. I've got glare and all that kind of stuff, but Hatsumi Sensei once said, I could write an entire book on one technique, on one kata. Right? Oh, shit. That's got to be more than just like step by step, right? Of course, because there's a physical aspect to it, there's a psychological aspect to it, there's a spirit or energy aspect to it, right? There's an influence aspect to it, right? How does what I do influence what he does? Not just pain response and flinch response and things like that, or he gets broken. That's very gross level. I don't mean ugly. I mean like big. It's this big kind of thing, right? There's a lot to it, right? So I could write an entire book on one technique. That when I heard that lesson a long time ago, blew me away. So here we are. I started in 1980, and as I'm recording this is October of 2025. It took me a lot of those years to understand that. Okay, so we can hear a lesson, but understanding it, that can take a little bit of time, right? So we got the collector, and then we have what we might call the craftsman, right? Or even the martial scientist, okay? Because I don't like the term martial artist. I think the term martial artist belongs to people that can look like they're actually breaking the rules to produce results, except that they're not breaking them. It only looks like they're breaking them to us because they know them so well that it becomes confusing when we try to figure out how it works. Okay, I believe that we, in the beginning, should apply ourselves as a martial scientist because a scientist explores things and studies things and observes things to be able to understand it. Then it can be applied and put to use to produce other benefits. Okay, so, but we could also call them the craftsman, right? So the Deshi, this type of student, right, digs deep into what they've already been given, right? They're not looking or chasing after the next thing because the next thing is waiting at another level under the technique that they already have or within the technique they already have, right? So if you've ever felt like you're training a lot but not improving much, maybe this is why. I can't say for sure. I don't know your context, right? I'm looking at a screen, looking at a camera, and you're on the other side. So I'm talking to a whole bunch of a whole bunch of individuals, right? And I don't know your context, okay? But if this resonates, maybe this will help, right? So now we're just fresh out of our annual fall Ninja Deshi camp intensive, right? We do spring, we do a fall, and then I do a New Year's kind of thing. As a matter of fact, this was our 34th annual thing. I know if you go from like when I started teaching and all that, but COVID got in the way and life issues got in the way and things like that. But we've done quite a bit, right? The theme of this one was universality of technique. And what I mean by that is you will see the same technique and the same theme across unarmed, striking, grappling, multiple weapons, modern, traditional, whatever, right? But if we boil down or if we dive into those things, what we see are a core set of principles. Now, there's more than the 5 I'm going to talk about, and more than the 5 that I focused on during camp. But this is an excellent place to start. Okay, so again, instead of giving folks a whole bunch of techniques, technique collectors would have thought they got ripped off coming to camp because we only worked on a couple of techniques, right? Or partial pieces of techniques, but we worked on like adjusting footwork, adjusting timing, those kind of things, right? So, but what we did was we went back to core principles, right? Not to learn more, right? But to connect more, to uncover more, right? To really recognize, like, how do I make this easier to do, more powerful, less energy output, right? Sticking to the principles, right? So take a look at these 5 very, very quickly, because this is going to be, or could be, our training compass, right? So we had Nagore, not Nage. Nage is throw, right? Nagore, which is flow, right? We had Naname, right? Naname means angling or an angle. Can also be said gaku, right? Like sankaku jime, triangle choke, right? So naname is an angle, right? And it's not always 30 degrees, 45 degrees, or whatever. Anytime somebody gives you a number for something, it's an expedient based on where you are. Okay, it's our job to find that number or find that proper angle, right? We worked on my, okay? Not my eye, right? My is a different word. My, right? My, just to simplify it, we're going to call that distancing. But a lot of these things, again, just looking at the surface level word, you know what they mean because you know English, right? Or whatever your language is and converted to English. But even these things have to be explored more, okay? Because it can imply distance, but it can also imply gaps, intervals. So again, there's another timing issue to that, just like there's a timing to flow. Angling adjusts timing or it influences timing, right? This other one, which often people translate as timing, ritsudo, okay? Ritsudo, we looked at it from the concept of timing, right? But ritsudo means rhythm, okay? It can also imply like breath, right? Like the breath of the fight, right? Intuitively feeling where things are going and this rhythm, this back and forth kind of thing that's going on as we're trading shots and trying to maneuver. And one of us, we go from thinking about attacker and defender from a moral standpoint. Attacker equals bad guy, defender equals good guy. There, in all of our stuff, there is no moral or ethical judgment or implication in the Densho with the way techniques are written out, right? because a true warrior understands that universal justice specifies that the person who does the most things right at the right time and fewer wrong things, fewer mistakes, universal justice says they're going to win. Okay, this is about rightness, not righteousness. Okay, so the Japanese actually don't have a word for this word that we have, timing. Okay, which is why often you'll hear a Japanese teacher, they'll be speaking Japanese, and all of a sudden you hear this word timingu, which is the Japanese way of saying timing, timingu, right? Just like the English way of saying karate is karate, right? Or aikido is aikido, right? So it's just this little linguistic twist. But they use that because they don't think that way. They don't have a specific word for that thing. They kind of go together. But I borrowed this out for students so we could work on like when's the best time for that fist in an uke uchi and an uke nagash to touch that incoming arm, right? To catch him, right? Those kind of things. But when's the best time to move? When's that kind of thing, right? So these things, and then we finished out with one called kotsu. Okay, kotsu, not kotsu as in bone, and not kotsu as in ego. Kotsu. This kotsu is essence, not the smell. Okay, essence or the essential nature of the technique. What is the technique doing? What is the strategic intent? Right? What is where's that? How is that technique controlling them? But also, what's the essential nature of each move in that technique? What is it doing tactically and strategically to control the space, him, his options, setting you up for the next thing? Okay, that kind of thing. Right. So I know. Do you have to learn this stuff? No, you can do whatever you want. Okay. But if we're going to understand things to the depth that the master teachers way back in ancient days who wrote this shit down and passed it on, okay, we might want to do that. Okay. One teacher told me a long time ago that we look at the scrolls and we look at the densho with the list of techniques and whatnot, and there's this little skeletonized description. Uke does this, right? And Tori XYZ, whatever, right? So that's shorthand. Paper was expensive. You had to make your own ink or pay somebody else to make it, right? It was made out of soot sticks and whatnot, right? Long, laborious work, and paper was freaking expensive because it was all handmade, right? So everything's in shorthand, right? So what the master teachers did was they wrote down the minimum necessary for you to get from where you are to where they are or where they were, okay? And the rest of it gets filled in from a teacher who can pass on things through kuden, right, or shinden, right? The person to person kind of thing, right? And we'll speak on that in a bit because there is a type of person who thinks they're a student. They don't need no stinking teacher, okay? And perhaps that's just based on who they thought they had or trained with before, or they think that you can just look at something and go, "That's easy to figure out." Cool. All right. So, So we have Nagare, Mai, Naname, Oritsuro, Kotsu, right? So these five become your compass, right? If you so choose, right? But this is how I was introduced to the art. I wasn't introduced to the art with kata, with techniques. Techniques, when I started, we didn't know about kata lists. As a matter of fact, they lied to us and told us there were no kata in Nijutsu, which is not untrue. But in Kyokoryu, Kotoryu, the non-ninja lineages, yeah, there are. But they lied, so we didn't get fixated on that stuff because this system is a system of principles and concepts, strategies and tactics, and how those things get applied and combined, not fixed moves, right? So from 1980 through, and even I found out the Japanese master teachers long before that, since they would throw out a name and they'd go, "What is that?" And somebody would show it and they go, "Didn't even know that had a name." Right? Because it's not about that. It's about understanding how these things work and whatnot, because names can get our brains fixed on something and then we get stuck, right? So they can be your compass, right? Every training session, in my opinion, right, should include at least one, right? You could do more the farther down the line you are, but in the beginning, I highly recommend that somebody you take the same kata and practice it every day of the week. And every day you could just focus on one thing, right? But we could also focus on the flow between the moves. So the whole kata, right? Getting from beginning to end, not stopping. But we could also explore transitional flow, right? So we move back into kamae, and then we have to go back forward. Like, let's say we're doing Jumonji no kata, right? So we start here, and we've got this, and then there's that jab to the ribs, and then there's this distraction, that kind of thing, right? But what we could do is just practice that turnaround here, because there's going to be a gap created when I do this uke nagash or this uke uch to break his balance, right? And that creates an opening. It creates an opportunity. So I need to exploit that. This strike happens in the gap in his movement. If I'm too early or too late, he can catch it. He can avoid it. So I could practice that, right? I can practice this, right? I can practice repositioning to the new position, right? And then I can do it Tai Chi speed. There's all kinds of ways I can do it, because what I'm trying to do is ferret out my mistakes that I might not recognize, or that ego might be trying to cover up with speed or trickiness or whatever, but they still exist. The weakness, the mistakes still exist. And whether he recognizes it and catches me on purpose, or he just happens to catch me, hit me, grab me, or whatever at the right time, when I have that little mistake going on, I lose. Okay? So it's better for us to ferret it out than to have him discover it. Okay? So anyway, so these are our 5 core that we worked on. Are there more? Sure. There's Kyujutsu Tenkan. There's all kinds of things. There's looking at these things from a ground position, right? Because some of the principles in Taijutsu that we use standing are either don't matter as much, or they're 180 degrees in the opposite direction when we're on the ground, like Kazushi, right? Balance breaking. Physical balance breaking, right? Because there's balance breaking, there's mental, psychological balance breaking, there's emotional balance breaking, right? There's energy balance breaking, right? Kazushi's not just this shove him off balance kind of thing, but on the ground, as far as physical taijutsu go or physical Kazushi goes, if I'm already on the ground, if he's already on the ground, I don't have to worry about my balance being broken and falling down. I'm already on the ground, right? So again, this is one of those things where knowing a move and understanding what's going on and what you need to be concerned about and whatnot are not they don't not necessarily together. Okay, all right. So let's dive into Sensei's quote here just a little bit more. Right, again, he once said that he was just talking, teaching, and whatnot, and really trying to get people past this technique collector mentality, right? That runs so rampant in a lot of places, right? Because in a lot of places, the art is passed on more like museum pieces. What I mean by that is you can't change the kata. It doesn't matter what kind of things adapt. I had a friend one time. He was in a completely different martial art, this kind of martial art, right? The kata kind of thing. And he was testing for a 2nd degree black belt, and he invited me to come along. So I'm watching this thing, and he's doing everything. And I don't know what I'm looking at, right? Because I'm not in that system. His movement looks good. I mean, it's very robotic, but it looks, he's not falling off balance. He's not uncoordinated, that kind of thing. And at the end, he had a little hesitation on like a last move, right? It was a partner thing, right? It wasn't a solo kata. And there was this little hesitation, and then he very quickly recovered and finished, and then bowed out and whatnot. And he failed the entire test. He got everything but this last move right. But he changed it because he told me later, just something different about the way his uke was coming in with that strike. He didn't think he could make it work, so he made this adjustment, and it passed. So I don't know if it was a reflection of the teacher, the art, how things got passed on, but um, very different, right? So again, Hazumi Sensei uh, said that he could write an entire book on just one technique. Well, my brain starts calculating. Let's say we've got, I don't know, an average of a dozen kata, some less, some more, 23, 18, whatever, right? Um, per scroll, minimum 3 scrolls per lineage, not counting weapons and all that kind of stuff, right? 9 lineages. It's a lot of books, okay? But a whole book. He was when he gestured, he whole book, not like whole book, okay? Now think about that, right? One technique, one kata, could fill at least one book, if not volumes, okay? So there's got to be more to it than just the moves, right? And there is, okay? That's because every technique holds layers of psychology, physics, intent, just whole list, right? Waiting to be discovered, right? It is a model. It's an example of these principles and concepts in action, right? It's a potential, but we have to get past. It's an example for whooping somebody's ass. Right? How? Right? How does it counter not just the guy who's throwing ski, this classical thing that everybody works off of, but how does it deal with the jab, right cross or uppercut guy? How does it deal with the taekwondo roundhouse or axe kicker, right? How does it take anybody throwing whatever they want, right? Jabs like this or hooks or whatever, right? And at the end, when it gets to you, it's straight like a ski. How does that kata, how does doing things a certain way create an end result? Right? So the difference between the average student and the deshi, what we mean by a deshi, right, is that the deshi never stops uncovering those layers because the deshi is on their way to becoming not just a sensei. Sensei is just like gakusei for student. Sensei is an everyday word in Japan. Most people think sensei is just a martial arts teacher. No, sensei means teacher. Okay? A school teacher, sensei. Okay? Somebody teaching you something because they're good at it, sensei. Okay? A master of both the lineage, which also implies life mastery, shisho. Not the same. Okay? Not the same. So the deshi is on their way to doing that. They're not just learning things. Okay? So let's do this. Let's take a look at fixing the disorganization problem or the getting lost or the not knowing what to practice next or things feeling stale or even worse yet, right? They feel stale. I get bored and I stop training. Right? That's even worse than not going deep on things. Okay. So here's a suggestion for how to structure your training sessions like a deshi. Okay. Again, this is a framework. It's an example. As my teachers have always said, you're a grown up. You can do whatever you want. Okay. It's a suggestion. Okay. So 5 stages to it for each workout session. Okay. Again, it's just a structure. Okay. So the first thing is obviously do a warm up. Okay. Junin Taiso, something like that. However, please note that modern sports science, right? Biology, physiology, all that kind of stuff, right? This isn't a whole bunch of stretching, right? Science now recommends that stretching come after to help get the lactic acid and all that kind of stuff out. Stretching is still important, but stretching is actually more productive at the end of your day, just before you go to bed, because you've been using your body all day long. Okay. Before a workout, if you stretch or you overstretch, you actually run the risk of pulling something more than if you don't stretch at all. Okay. What a warm up is walking, right? You could, whether you come into the dojo and you just kind of walk around while you're chatting with people and shooting the shit before class starts, or park farther away from the dojo, or walk around your property, walk around your house once or twice, whatever. Okay. Warm up is what it means. We do something light, right? It's a light aerobic kind of thing to get to a point where we feel like we're about to start sweating, but we're not sweating yet. That's the body warmed up, right? It's prepped for more work, right? So things start to loosen up and things like that, right? How you do it, that's entirely up to you, okay? The next thing is doing something that is principle focused. Okay, so warm up, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that, right? Whatever it takes. Principal focus, 10 to 15 minutes, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to choose one of the 5 principles, okay? During today, I'm going to work on Ichimonji no Kata, and I am going to focus on, I don't have a training partner, so I'm going to focus on the nagare, right? My ability to flow and transition between points. If I have a training partner, I could still work on that, but now the flow is based on his movements. He leads the dance, okay? I covered 3 different types of flow and timing during camp. One, we might call coordination. How well can I coordinate things and make the separate moves in Ichimonji no Kata, right? Shifting to Kamai, Uke Nagash, shifting into unbalance, right? Delivering the shito, and then back out again, right? Kind of like a hit and run. 5 pieces, 5 parts, 1 flow. Okay? This is in the oldest books translated into English, whatever, okay? The flow is whatever the kata is, it's that many moves, but 1 movement, 1 flow. Okay, as though, think about going to the store. Okay, you walk from wherever you are in your house. You grab your keys. You go out the door, down the steps to the car, unlock or not, open the door, slide in, start the car, drive the. Right. We didn't stop at each stage. Okay, it's 1 flow to get to the damn store. Okay, this should be like life. So we pick one of these, and that's what we're going to focus on. Okay. And then, so with this flow, I haven't even talked about technique yet. We're just working on that transitional kind of thing. Or if I'm working naname, I might have a start point, or I might have, I always suggest to my students, put something on the floor that creates kind of an asterisk, an 8-spoked wheel, right? So in the beginning, everybody learns how to go naname about 45 degrees from where they are, right? So we're shifting, back on one side, we're shifting back on the other side, but there's 6 other angles because I don't know which direction the attacker is actually going to come from at some point. So if I put this pattern on the floor and then I practice stepping off straight to that side, but facing him here, stepping right forward naname, directly to the front, turning clockwise or counterclockwise, again, without losing my balance, without my kamae breaking, anything like that. So not only do I not know which way he's coming, but if I have to be naname to the line of his attack, then I'm not just moving 180 degrees away from him. So I'm practicing to move every kamae, right? That because I don't know which way I need to go. So whatever I pick, that's where I'm going to go with it, right? And then we have technique refinement. Technique. Refinement, right? We might work on this for, 15, 20 minutes, okay? Again, 1 kata. So when I'm doing this principle-based stuff, I'm I'm going to choose one of 5 principles, but I don't need to necessarily stay with one kata or one kamae or whatever. I might go through a couple of them because the focus isn't on the skill or the technique. The focus is on developing my body so it can flow or it can move to certain angles, uh, so I don't suck at any one of them, right? Getting proper distance, those kind of things, right? But then we're going to pull this technique like Ichimo's no kata, right? And I'm going to explore that in detail, right? What I might do with that is, as he's coming in, right, I might just, again, whether I have a partner or not, I might practice shifting and doing it with an uke nagash. I might do it with a certain type of uke uch, right, or a different type of uke uch, right, or whatever, right? Just I'm going to work these things because they go together, and then as I come back in, right, I'm going to practice putting my hand in different places, right, in a way to draw his attention because he's worried about this thing anyway. And then how do I step into strike, right? Do I step straight into strike? Am I going to cross step and come in from an outside angle? Whatever, right? I'm going to work on these different elements in this kata to get better at all of them, right? And then I might do some integration drills. Okay? So who knows? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever, okay? And so, again, now I'm going to link that principle that I worked on to that kata. So now I'm putting things together, okay? An example of this, not exactly the same, but in my youth classes, well, I do it with the adults too, right? We'll practice some like chitobi kind of actions, right? Sometimes we call it a bunny drop, where we're standing here and something's coming at our head, and instead of doing something like this, we'll drop straight down, get our head at belt level so that we're under this thing, and then we can come back up, right? So we might work on that. And then we might work on hira evasion, let that thing slide through. And then what we'll do is we'll bring them together, where I'll have the student avoid something in hira, right? It's coming at him, get out of the way, and then, because the bad guy's not going to miss and then go, that was really cool, dude. Where do you take classes, right? So once they move, the attacker just turns it into a lateral shot, so they avoid it, and now the next thing's coming in, and so they're stringing these things together to make sure that they understand how they work, okay? And then I'm going to take some reflection time. Okay? That doesn't mean look at yourself in a mirror, okay? So 5 minutes maybe, right? This is like the Kaizen process. In Kaizen, we have planning, we have activity, we have assessment, but there's not really assessment. There's a review stage, right? Where we assess what we did, right? I do this in every class that I teach. At the end of every class, every student has to tell me what they learned today. Okay? What stands out? I don't care if it's something they need to work on or it's something that they fixed, or what did they learn? Okay? We could ask ourselves the same thing. Or how did this training make me feel? I don't mean like I suck, I'm all that, right? I don't mean that. What I mean is, how easy was it, right? Or were there a couple of angles and whatnot that was uncomfortable, right? That kind of thing, not that kind of feeling, not whatever. Are you one step closer to training again tomorrow, or one step closer to quitting? Not that kind of feeling, all right? So again, it's a way to do it, but this keeps focusing back on this. So we can work on technique and getting better at the technique. We might try a couple of variations, see how that'll work, whatever, right? But they then get tied together, okay? So it integrates these things, and it helps us to stop thinking of practice as just rote repetition, right? This gets us to think about practice as research, right? Martial scientist, research, right? Every repetition is a new experiment. As a matter of fact, I had teachers very early in my training when we were doing techniques. alone or with a partner. The instruction was do every technique against that punch, kick, whatever, right? Do every single one as though you have never done it before. Move to kamae, evade against that incoming punch, grab, kick, sword, whatever, as though you have never avoided one before, as though you have never, because every situation in some way is slightly different. Right? That's what allows us to learn adaptability. Okay? That's what allows us to understand what the model is teaching. Right? So during Kuden, I also, if you saw the graphic that I used to promote it and whatnot, I don't think I put it up during the show. I don't think so. But I described it, right? So got this yin yang. Now, this is discussing things from a teacher-student relationship. To be a deshi, we must have a teacher. Not just somebody teaching us stuff, somebody who is responsible for our progress, responsible for teaching things correctly so that I can develop correctly, not just showing us stuff, right? So when we have that kind of dynamic, right, it's like this, the yin yang, right? So the yin side, right, the light side, right, this is us, right? I don't care how you decide it, but this would normally be us, right? So this is individual work, right? This is self-study. This is exploration, right? So self-study, exploration, right? Individual work, right? We might even say self-learning, that kind of thing, but I don't mean self-learning like I don't need no teacher, I'm going to learn this myself. No. Okay, this is taking what the teacher has given us and working with it to develop it. Okay? I was taught very early on that I was only ever going to get 10% of this art in the dojo. There's not enough time. Okay? The other 90%, I had to figure out. I had to do the work to understand it. Because no amount of them explaining it to me was going to help with my understanding. But the other problem with the teacher telling you everything is that we become dependent because we're being spoon-fed. And so we wait until the teacher tells us something before or shows us a variation that maybe weeks, months, or years prior to that, we could have discovered ourselves if we were doing the work. Okay? So left, yin side, right? Self-study, exploration, individual work, that kind of stuff. On the right side, right, the yang side, this is guidance from the teacher. Okay? What kind of guidance? The teacher is passing on what their teacher gave them, right? So a deshi, in the classical sense, is a vessel. And a shisho is always looking for worthy vessels, not because they say they're going to be dedicated or whatever, right? If we're pouring something into a vessel, the vessel has to be right for the thing that we're doing, right? If I want to make a big pot of soup or something like that, right, for a family of 6, 8, who knows, right? I'm going to need a big freaking kettle, right? It probably should not be, it shouldn't have holes in it, those kind of things, because whatever I pour in is going to freaking leak out, right? Gas tank for the car, whatever, right? But if I need to strain my steamed peas or, I don't know, pasta or whatever, the vessel I put it in, a colander, strainer, right, should have a shit ton of holes in it so that it holds the important stuff and lets the fluids drain away, right? So that's what we're talking about, this vessel, right? So the teacher was discovered by their teacher and was trusted with this transmission. And then they are always on the lookout for. That doesn't mean that a dojo can't have dozens and dozens of students. But the teacher within that group is looking for, right? During Kuden, I shared an analogy that Sensei gave us a long time ago, and that it was like panning for gold. Okay, You got to get a whole bunch of mud and stones and sand and whatever in that process into that screen, sifting around in the hopes that you find a flake. And I don't mean somebody that's flaky. I mean like a flake of gold or a little, nugget that you're going to have to collect a bunch of those things. What they're really looking for is, something that a bag of little flakes and all that kind of stuff. This thing is going to be worth a lot, right? So again, just an analogy, but this doesn't mean that the teacher only ever has one student or the teacher only has a small handful or whatever that are just like them. He said it was like panning for gold. You're going to have to go through a bunch of students to find a handful that are worthy, and then hopefully out of that handful, one will be able to carry it on because they have loyalty to the lineage. There's no ego in the way of the learning process, and they understand that this isn't going to be all like unicorn farts and rainbows, right? The teacher will challenge them, and it will hurt physically, mentally, emotionally, but they have to trust that the teacher has their best interest in mind. Okay, so how does a Deshi fit? Right, in a minute. Well, you know what? I'll just double back to this part with the Deshi. Right, let's jump forward to 4 types of learners. Please notice that I underlined the word learners, not students. I'm not talking about 4 types of students, because there's a couple of people on here that see themselves as students because they study something. But there's, just like with the yin yang, there's a dichotomy that people often miss, right? I have met martial artists who've told me that they're a martial arts teacher. And I go, well, that's cool. How many students do you have? I don't have any students right now, kind of in between dojo and stuff. Well, then you're not a teacher right now. You're a proficient or, whatever, practitioner, right? You know a lot of stuff. But without a student, the teacher's not a teacher. Just like a student without a teacher is not a student. There's somebody that's studying something or trying to learn it or whatever. But those 2 things have to go together, right? An employer, I'm a one-man show in the dojo as a business, right? Not an employer. I don't have employees, okay? Which is always weird in the whole tax code where somebody's self-employed. Anyway, so 4 types of students. The first one we're going to talk about is a general term for student, right? Gakusei. Gakusei, right? The translation of Gakusei is the mirror of sensei. Sensei, the kanji used to write sensei, means one who has gone before me or one who was born before me, right? So it implies that they know more, have more experience or whatever, and they can guide those behind them. Gakusei, one who follows, one who came after. Not the same. That's not what a Deshi means, okay? So Gakusei, this is somebody who is they're a student, they're a learner. Right? But just like I said, in Japan, a school teacher, academic school teacher, still sensei. Academic school students, gakusei. Okay? So academic, which means they're stopping at learning the stuff so they can pass the test. They might even ask before they even before they even start taking notes. Is this on the test? What do I need to get that belt? How long will it take until I get my black belt in this art? I understand, but I also understand that tells me what that person is focused on. Okay? Most people don't realize that the belt system is designed for the teacher to know where you are and how to explain things to you. From any given moment, they should know what you should know and what you need next. Okay? But shouldn't be a participation trophy. Okay. The next one is keikonin. Keiko nin. Right? Keiko nin. Okay. Keiko nin. Um, it can mean, or if you adjust the kanji or whatever, keiko is old ways, right? Or things that were developed before me, kind of thing, right? Or things that have been around for a while. Nin, the kanji is a person, okay? What we're talking about here is the translation or the implication in Japanese is a practitioner, right? So they practice things. Okay, we might even say that here's an English twist. We could call it a driller, right? Somebody who has some skills and whatnot, and they're just practicing those things. They're just drilling those things over and over again, right? The solo person who gets off work or whatever throws the gloves on and goes at the heavy bag, right? But it's the same workout. They could use different combinations every day or whatever, but the punches, the kicks, the knees, whatever, it's within a certain realm, and that's what they're doing. Okay, they're getting really good at that thing. Cool. Okay, um, but there's no implication that they have a teacher. They could have got the stuff off of YouTube. They could have got it off of a movie. Right? Their brother's second cousin, whatever, could have shown them something. Okay, so whatever it is that they have, they're just going to practice it and drill it. Okay, there's no implication. There's a regular back and forth exchange with a teacher to get new stuff or to have the stuff you're doing assessed to make sure that we're not making mistakes that could put us in the hospital's refrigerator room. Right. All right. The next one is dokugakusha. Dokugakusha. Right. So dokugakusha. Again, sha is a person. All right. So dokugakusha. This is a person who is self-taught. Right. They're trying to be the teacher and the student at the same time. Right? I'll just binge watch all these things. I mean, you see the video; it's right there, man. It's easy to see. Right? There's no consideration that I can only see from one angle. I can't see the other 360 degrees that way, and I can't see it this way. I also can't see how they're firing muscles. I can't see what they're looking for, what they're looking at, how they assess when they touch somebody. Nothing. Right? I see physical demonstration that could be no different than dance moves, and I'm just going to work that out. Now, does that mean this person can't develop a certain level of? No, of course not, right? The teacher is passing the lineage, right? So the lessons and the musha, not the musha, the shisho, the master, is because they received it correctly and they're working the process always themselves. They're always adding things as well. So part of the kuden is like the art is this way, but remember, it was done this way at this period in time because of clothing, footwear, the way the roads. We've got paved roads. They didn't. They had to worry about muddy, bloody, whatever, right? Weapons were this way, whatever, right? Today, you have to worry about somebody who is throwing a hook or a spinning back kick or whatever, right? So here's how you need to adjust around that because of the principle, not because the kata says step that way. Remember, the kata is showing you off of a straight line attack. So yeah, okay, great. That's great, right? But a spinning back kick, that angle is going to be way different. Okay? To be in the right place at the right time to meet them, to neutralize the force of the attack, and to be able to counter without having your head kicked off, right? It's very different, right? So gakusei, keikonin, dakugakusha, right? Self-taught. And then we have deshi, right? Deshi, right? Okay. Deshi come in two forms, right? Omote deshi and uchi deshi. Uchi deshi, inside learner. Omote deshi, outside learner, right? Uchi deshi lives with the teacher. Most of us are not. Most of us are outside, right? So we travel to the teacher or some of us, uh, you know, have hosted seminars and things and bring the teacher to them. And many people should probably be thankful because they wouldn't go any other way. So, but Deshi, while it can still be translated as student, the kanji for Deshi, I had these things written up here, but I'm going to write them now. So let's use red as a contrast, right? So we've got this. Let's see this. Okay, that and okay. There's a reason I put it on here straddling. If you were on for Kuden, you know why. Okay, the Deshi straddles these two realms. They're getting guidance from the teacher. They're going and they're doing self-study. They go back. The teacher doesn't just give them more stuff. The teacher assesses to make sure that this stuff is in line with the principles and concepts that they're supposed to be getting really, really good at. Right. So Deshi means disciple. I know that throws a lot of people off. Okay, disciple, right? And it also means or implies, because it means receiver of transmission. Oh, that's different. Okay. Okay, receiver of transmission. Okay, a true Deshi. Check this out. We've got 4 types of learners, but a Deshi does all of these things, right? They are sometimes in student mode. Teacher's teaching, they're taking notes, they're learning, that kind of thing, right? They are going and they're practicing things, right? Practitioner, driller, that kind of thing, right? Part of their study is, we could say it's self-taught, but it's a discovery. It's a rediscovery of the truths instead of just trying to regurgitate, memorize stuff, right? But there's this constant back and forth, okay? But the point is, they're not there just to learn stuff so they can practice it and pick and choose what they want from the teacher. There's a lot more to this side, but they are being a worthy vessel to receive that transmission because the next generation's receiving the art is in their hands. Okay, so so the true Deshi embodies all 4, right? They study, they practice, they explore, and they submit to correction. They keep their damn ego at bay, right? Well, I know a couple of guys that went and bought their own black belts because they kept wanting a black belt, and their teacher kept telling them, "You're not ready yet. You're not there yet." And well, screw him. I think I'm ready for black belt, so I'm just going to go get my own. Or I'm going to leave that person and I'm going to go to somebody else who I can get a black belt from easier. So it's not really about being good at the art. It's, I want one of these. Well, shit, you can go buy one of those. Why spend all the time, effort, and money? Well, because people think they're trying to be honest. It's the same reason that people go from church to church, spouse to spouse, all that. Okay? I'm not saying that somebody might not have a bad teacher. I'm not saying that somebody might not have a bad spouse, whatever. Okay, but when the ego is driving and it wants something other than, when it wants what it wants, not what's there to get, to develop, right? You get a different outcome. Okay. So, weekly challenge, if you so choose, right? This week, don't add more. Okay. Don't add more. Take one kata, just one. Okay. And make it your book. How much can you discover from something that you think you already know? Okay. Just running it through these principles. Right? Break it apart. Slow it down. Are you still as smooth? It's really, really slow, or did the joints lock up? Does your balance break? Right? Something stiffen up? Right? Do you start out slow and then you have to catch yourself? Right? Those kind of things, right? Feel through the principles and record what you discover. Okay? That's the kind of training that separates technique collectors from martial artists, or again, martial scientists who truly live their art. Nagato Sensei, right, our new Asoke for the Shinden Fudo Ryu, has said, Budo is something that you live. If you're not doing that, then it's just imitation. It's just a performance. Okay? So on Friday, for our Friday masterclass, do I have the link right there? Yeah, I do. Okay. So we're going to take one, maybe two techniques, and we're going to look at an evolutionary path. And I did this with the folks at fall camp. We took one evasive movement and looked at how a beginner who is worried about getting hit and all those kind of things, and wants to make sure there's lots of distance and space, right? What the distance, what the timing, what the positioning and whatnot would look like, and they're going to get promoted for that because that's the standard at that level. Not looking for Nidon or Godon or whatever standards from somebody who's still, right, the coordination's not completely there yet. The understanding of things is not completely there yet. There's fear or anxiety or stiffness or habits from another system, right? So, and then what does it look like for an intermediate student? What does it look like for an upper intermediate? What does it look like for Shodan Nidon? And then what does it start to look like for, in our curriculum, Sandan and above, where he's touching us, but we're still translating that as an evasion because we're not avoiding contact, we're avoiding damage. And so to let him touch me causes his brain to score a hit or an almost hit and see if I can tag him at the same time. Then I cause a huge collapse. Okay. So, but we're going to take this from theory into practice, right? And so we're going to walk through how to do a little bit of this to give folks who want it an example about how to take this, right? So again, if you've ever wondered how to make home practice feel like dojo training, yeah, this is it, right? That's kind of the last piece to the puzzle. Okay, so just a little closing reflection, right? If you want to do it, jump on that thing, right? Go to the website. But as these two go together, right? For the Deshi, the teacher gives you the path or gives you a path, right? The Deshi builds the road by walking it. Okay, and the difference between good and great is what you do when no one's watching. When I go to Japan, a lot of people that have good taijutsu in the dojo. They take that uniform off, they put their clothes on, they walk to the train station, and the way they walk and carry themselves and live outside I have to wonder where the lessons went. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully, I'll see you for the Friday's class. If not, no harm, no foul. Don't forget, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have our weekly Kuden podcast. And if I don't see you for that, well, then hopefully I'll see you next week for our next episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Right? Be safe.